based on a sentence, on a phrase by the American philosopher Samuel Weber, who once wrote, "In the theater, everyone tends to forget his or her proper place." The text is based on two experiences I had with the work of Rose English. The first experience, Guy, we didn't know each other then yet, was when I saw Rose performing Beloved in a small theater called The Lantern, the Lantaarnzaal, in Rotterdam. And that piece inspired me for a production which I staged in the 80s called Publikumschimpfung by Peter Handke, who wrote the piece in 1969. And I was completely in love with Beloved, because Rose, in breaking the social conventions of the theater, went so much further than what we achieved with this early piece of Peter Handke. The second experience was only, I think, a year ago, and it was at the gallery of Karsten Schubert. And there I saw the installation of the work Quadrille of 1975, and I was flabbergasted for many different reasons, not only because of the exotics and the English exotics and the erotics at play, but for many different reasons. And hopefully Tate is going to acquire this piece as well. But now my little text for Rose English, Guy Brett, but of course also for Marta Fleming and Doro Globus, and especially for my Belgian compatriot, my comrade, Sarah Straume. I want to speak to her Flemish again, and her dialect, have our congratulations with this book, which is a real true artwork by itself. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to begin with what might at first seem like a detoured presentation of an argument around a familiar topic. A familiar topic not in the least in our cultural institutions of today, and that familiar topic is called the public sphere. While the public sphere has been supplanted by discussions of public space, the confusion between the terms sphere and space conceals the problem of the public not only today in struggles against the privatization of public goods, including public space, but also ever since the public was tabled as a concept of debate a century ago. Introducing the public as a problem, and in more emphatic expressions as a phantom lost, bewildered, in eclipse, was and still is bound up with theatrical metaphors. The public divides into actors, those professionals vested with the power to act in the public realm, and the majority of lay bystanders pursuing private individual interests that turn them into detached observers of public actions, deaf spectators in the back row. The opposition between active actors and passive spectators curiously echoes in recent discussions on spectatorship, in which not only theater and performance, but also visual art is once again tried by the imperative that it proves its public mission. Contradictions are abound. Contradictions around the claims of curators and artists alike, claims for the activation and engagement of, as well as the forcing of participation on the audience. Theater, performance, visual arts. Rose English is working with those and within those three disciplines. But Rose England is also addressing exactly that, the apparent opposition between active and passive spectators. And most importantly, Rose English works addresses today's lack of faith in theatricality. A lack of faith which we can see in today's political theater, documentary theater, and in the theater of today, which tries to redefine itself as working with narrative space, or think also about the de-skilling at work in dance and performances, which are now everywhere, including in museums. In the work of English, I will argue here that theatricality might be seen as a political and ontological mode of appearance, a matter of staging and mimesis that constitutes the public. Today, lack of faith in theatricality as a mode of representation invokes the main reason for Plato's condemnation of theatre, mimesis. Mimesis is threatening because it is inherently ambiguous, as the famous passage in Republic tells us that mimetic words set up in each individual's soul a vicious constitution by fashioning phantoms far removed from reality, and by currying favor with the senseless element that cannot distinguish the greater from the less, but calls the same thing now one, now the other. Plato in the Republic. Because they refuse to speak in their own name, acting at a distance from themselves or imitating the action of another, actors and poets do threaten authority. And worst of all, their acts bear no personal responsibility and are immune to law. The duplicity, or more precisely, the artificiality of mimesis that Plato bans in his ideal state is exactly the new possibility for thinking about art, sociality, and the humanity of man introduced in the 18th century's conception of the public and theatre. Far from spontaneous and natural, public behavior was then considered a matter of artificially codified performance. Do not people talk in society of a man being a great actor? They do not mean by that he feels, but that he excels in simulating, though he feels nothing, writes Diderot. Likewise, a useful distinction can be found in the concepts of doing, which refers to all human actions, and showing, doing, which refers to performance. There is a logic of contradiction without resolution there. One imitates in order to become oneself. And this is what is perfectly evident in the French verb s'identifier. One identifies with someone else in order to identify oneself reflexively, to become identical with oneself. And this is to put oneself in an impossible situation. My friend, the late German theater director Christoph Schlingensief, told me once, we have realistic parts in us and we have also theatrical parts in us. Do you always know exactly where the one begins and the other ends? And that's exactly what I saw in Beloved in '85 in the Lantaren, and that's what I found back also in Paris. But let us quickly return to where we began, how theatre as a metaphor depicts the problem of the public sphere, the stage counterpart of today's agonistic pluralism would be post-dramatic theatre, which is supposed to cover diverse theatre and performance practices decentered from the model of dramatic text. And in our agonistic post-dramatic society, the public performs itself according to the democratic procedures that regulate conflicts and lead to consensus. To antagonize the public sphere by conflict entails breaking the rules of the performative of a liberal, democratic, agonistic, and post-dramatic public. And this may be regarded as an action that reinvests in the dramatic, that is to say, it re-dramatizes the public. This, ladies and gentlemen, is how I perceive the work of Rose English and her capacity to antagonize and dramatize our public selves. And the book is documenting that capacity. In chapter 1, Guy Brett writes, a Rose English performance does not reference the politics of the politicians, the temporary occupants of positions of authority, but rather a certain climate, the condition of living of the mass of citizenry, what it is like to inhabit a particular place at a particular time. And in chapter 4, which is called Brave Member of the Public, he writes, referring to English curious novel way of engaging the audience. Brett writes, it could also be said that the beloved, the shy one, is the audience itself. A work like The Beloved, writes Guy, is made in constant reference to the audience, and he remembers from the performance in Rotterdam, Rose bounding from the stage into the auditorium, up several tiers of seats, almost to the back of the theater, to waylay a Dutchman leaving for a customary mid-performance drink. In Quadrille from 75, 6 women appear dressed as horses, wearing aprons that cover their upper bodies, leather harnesses, horsetails, and roof-high heels. In an outdoor area, marked off by horse figurines, the women perform a dance based on dressage, surrounded by the visitors to the 1975 Southampton Horse Show. Their movements, made slow and cumbersome by the hoof shoes, fluctuate between absolute beauty and painful constraint, serving to highlight the fetishization of women's bodies. But Guy's description is more to the point than the description of the Tate curators. He writes, Quadrille, in a bold sortie, beyond the confines of the art world, as it was then, she took her work to the Southampton County Show, confronting avant-garde art with a cozy ritual of Middle England. As 6 women began to trot in formation under Rose English direction, the organizer of the event, a Mrs. Parker, ran in desperation onto the field to try to stop it. Undoubtedly, the artist was already touching a secret English nerve. Even a bareback rider would have been a provocation in this atmosphere. I read in chapter 14, To the House more. No doubt, ladies and gentlemen, Rose English was hacking the public sphere in order to regain the public sphere. Indeed, Rose, in your theater, everyone tends to forget his or her proper place. Thank you.